can catch it there. So welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are in terms of time zones. My name is Priya Sharma. I teach anthropology and philosophy at TAPMI Bengaluru, which is in southern part of India. And I am a co-lead of South Asian Bioethics Community with Suleha Shekhani, who's an assistant professor from SIUT Karachi, Pakistan. SABC was initiated in 2023, if I'm not wrong, Suleha. January.
Yes, 2023.
January 2023. So it's almost, almost slightly over 2 years. We've tried to create this space for early career researchers who work on ethics and justice related issues around healthcare in South Asia. And the project that we are going to discuss today, it is called Birth Futures Towards an Ecosystems of Care. This project reimagines our birth futures, and the workshops for this project have been held in the Netherlands, Peru, and India. So today we will of course have an overview of the project and where we are, at which stage we are right now, and what we are thinking of in the future with this project. But our focus, because we are holding this discussion under South Asian Bioethics Communities umbrella, will be on the Indian counterpart of this project and the issues of ethics and justice that we encountered while conducting the workshops, and also how the overall project, what does it say about the ethics and justice component of Birth Futures. So I'm very happy to have with us here Marilyn Pinnaples and Amrita Warrior, my colleagues at Birth Futures project. Marilyn is the first Dutch futures ecologist, and she'll tell you a bit more about that, what all she does as the futures ecologist. She interweaves the wisdom of nature with emerging technologies to reimagine our futures. She creates future scenarios as entangled in ecologies designed by and for humans other than human species and the non-living natural and artificial realm, each as an autonomous actor and valued participant. In 2022, Marilyn initiated this project, Birth Futures, a speculative program dedicated to reimagining birth care through innovative design and social dreaming. With researchers and midwives from the Critical Midwifery Studies Collective, where actually I and Marilyn met. With researchers and midwives from this collective and other people, she weaved together dreams for better birth by midwives, young parents, and healthcare professionals from diverse communities across countries, like I said, like in India, Peru, and the Netherlands. The goal is to foster dialogue and collaboration across geographies and time to explore holistic, inclusive futures for both. And I'm really happy to share that Marilyn's this methodology of reimagining futures called Futures Ecologies has been recognized in the Dutch National Manual Futures Thinking. And then we have with us Amrita. Amrita, our warrior, is an AI animator and media ecologist based in Berlin with a decade of experience. Beginning her journey by drawing frames on paper with ink on a light box, she went on to explore diverse animation techniques, blending 2D, 3D, and the hand-drawn elements, sometimes incorporating VR, AR, and AI. Inspired by her personal experiences and studies in media theory and 20th century philosophy, she now works as an AI consultant at Scale AI, collaborating with clients like Google and OpenAI. And independently, she works on a range of other creative projects like the one we are going to discuss today. So welcome, Marilyn, and welcome, Amrita, to South Asian Bioethics Community, and welcome to all our audience. So as we begin, I would first like to invite Marilyn to share the origins of the project and how she went about roping in various partners across countries, and then we will hear from Amrita, how did she get on board with this project. Over to you, Marilyn and Amrita.
Hi, thank you so much, Priya, and the bioethics community for the South Asia community for having us here. It's always fun to share our project with other people, and I really want to hear your thoughts and ideas and improvements or any kind of thing. I'd love to hear that from you as well. So Priya, do you think it's nice to share some of the slides already, or do you want to first short introduction of me and Amrita first?
I think we can share the slide simultaneously. So you can share the slide and we can go ahead.
Okay, let me grab the slides, see if this works. I'm working on a smaller laptop screen today, but I think this works, right? You can
Yes.
see our
Yes.
beautiful Birth Futures logo was designed by Dana Dijkgraaf, and also the background you see here, because we think that that stories come to life if visual images as well. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the start of Birth Futures and the vision and the drive behind it. I think, Priya, you already did a great job of introducing me. I am working as a futures ecologist, so imagining these future scenarios from through an ecological connected lens. I have a master's in marine ecology, so that's how I began. But I also worked in climate change, science, communication, and I had a design agency for over 12 years. And I'm also a mother. If I see people trying to get in, I'm just going to hit admit because I have that ability in this room now. So when I was pregnant with my first, and I was born and raised in the Netherlands, I didn't really recognize myself in the images I saw around birth. So in the Netherlands, we have a high quality medical care for birth as well, but it doesn't mean that there's a lot of things that are not underappreciated, but are not as well as they could be. So, for example, my first child was in a breech position, which makes it a medical birth. And only until a few years ago, it was a mandatory C-section. And it was because science that hadn't been done in the right way. So there were some evidence about how breech babies and birthing them vaginally was a danger to the baby. And then later studies refuted that. But only in a few countries, they would allow you to give birth or to try and give birth vaginally. So that was something as a scientist that I didn't understand. So if the science says one thing, why don't we change the policy? But of course, if you know how birth care works and care in general works, it's also a lot to do with how we view risks and birth and the position of women in a society and all of these things. So that got started when I got pregnant, but it's still my oldest is now 7.5. It's still something I find really interesting because I do think we need different kind of perspectives on birth care, on what it means to have a good birth, and also decentralize a specific Western vision and to include all of these different imaginations of what birth can be from different cultures. Because, for example, in the Netherlands, there's a big fear around birth, even though, like I said, it's a very high quality medical care. And I still feel that sometimes women here are more afraid to give birth than women in cultures that are actually more at risk, or people from communities that are more at risk. So yeah, I just want to have these new narratives around birth, but not just to have different stories. I really want to change the way we look at birth care, and I want to work together with medical researchers, health caregivers, to see how we actually combine technology and care models in the birthing space. So yeah, if we cannot imagine a different future, how can we create it? So that's the central thing in my work, that if we can't find it in our minds to imagine what we want the future to be like for a specific thing like birth care or healthcare, we cannot work towards it. And we're just being led by technologies and possibilities instead of what we actually think would help people have good births. So I'm a futures ecologist. I explore the future. It doesn't mean I can predict the future because no one can. It's more about acknowledging that there is no straight line from now to the future. And I don't know how this is in the Indian or in the Pakistan or the South Asian culture, but in my culture, we imagine the future as a line. Like here we are now, and then in front of me, the future goes into a straight line. And then there's the future, the year 2100. But actually, if you come to think of it, there's so many uncertainties. The future can go in a lot of different directions. And that is what this image shows. It's called the future cone. And you have different kind of futures. Some are ridiculous. Some are futures you prefer. And Earth Futures is about collecting all of these futures and to see if there's some wisdom or ideas or potential in some of these futures, and that we can talk about why something is an ideal future for one person and maybe a very bad idea of a future for another person. So it's always about multiple voices, multiple ideas. And our vision, I already talked about it. It is like a collective movement or an action towards having every expectant parent receive human-centered care. Because birth, as I experienced it, can be empowering, but it has to be supported by services that center the person giving birth, but also involve the community. And of course, technology is a part of that. And it differs, of course, in which culture you are approaching this. So these challenges, these are defined from like a Western lens. But I think some of these challenges are also taking place in other places in the world, but there are different challenges everywhere. So a lot of women experience obstetric violence during childbirth. In the Netherlands, I think it's estimated at 1 in 10 women, so 10-15%. And in some countries, it's as high as 90% of women. And of course, women and newborns of marginalized groups everywhere face higher risks of mortality and morbidity. For example, Black women in America and the UK, I think the risk is 3 times higher of them dying during childbirth than white women. And then there's technologization, which in my culture is decentering pregnant persons' experiences. And on the other hand, technology might actually provide a great improvement in as well, and it does in mine. So, but there's a complicated thing around technology. And then midwives' experiences, we found is often underutilized. So, and then they have different positions in different countries. And the thing in the Netherlands is as well that nobody talks about birth. And I know from my talks with Priya that it's sometimes hard for unmarried women, for example, in India to get information. So why is that? What's the reason in these different cultures? Or is it maybe even painful to talk about because of trauma? So I don't want to dwell too long on the approach. I'm happy to provide more information if anyone wants that. For me, but we do workshops. So we host workshops in different formats. Sometimes it's a 2-day local event. With Priya in India, she did multiple sessions and I was digitally present. And we want to design these like prototypes, like stories of possible futures and to see what technology do we have? How do we relate to caregivers and to communities, like in a broader sense? And we just want to explore what this is like. It's basically like taking a time traveling machine towards the future and then look around in a room where someone gives birth and talk about or make visual what that looks like. And we want to use that to create a toolkit to improve these healthcare services and connect and empower healthcare professionals worldwide. We're also trying to create like more of a tangible story, an exhibition, an art exhibition of all of the stories and ideas were collected. We're working on that for 1.5 years now and mostly trying to get the funding to build it because we think that these conversations also have to take place outside of healthcare professional circles, outside of scientists, with like regular people and having them talk and think about birth and what they think and feel with that. As Priya said, it's internationally by design. So India, Peru, and the Netherlands have hosted workshops. I'm trying to get workshops done in Australia. I'm connected to some universities there and in Belgium as well. And we just want to have this as an ongoing thing. And in the future, we want to have like a toolkit where people can do their own workshops because it doesn't just have to feed back into our network alone. We want this to sort of trickle down and offer this tool to other people who think it's useful. And this the text in this slide, it's about a sort of an inventory we had with, okay, what are main issues or things that play out in the specific areas in India or in Peru or in the Netherlands. And India being a vast country, so many different cultures, I think from south to north, things would be different there as well. This is just sort of an overview of what we found. And in India, we focused on reconnecting all the new ways of birthing. In Peru, it was also about reviving ancestral and mestizo practices. And in the Netherlands, it was about how do we balance technology with physiological birth. We made a zine in English that I'm happy to provide. Once I stop sharing my screen, I can look up the link and put it in chat, where you can see some of the results, some pictures, and a few stories created by the participants. And the methodology is described here as well. And I, of course, also want to take the time to give a shout out to our partners, especially Medical Midwifery Studies Collective, where Priya and I met, but also the College of Midwives in Peru, who hosted and co-organized the workshop in Peru, and McMaster's University, where Susanna Carbonell, our Canadian partner who is native from Peru, is working with and who's also had done a feature on the project last year. I think I'm going to skip the activities because I don't think that's interesting. It's basically what I already said about the things we have done and are planning. Do you want to go into some of the results from the India workshop now, Priya? And maybe you can chime in as well because you hosted these workshops, and then we can hear from Amrita how she used AI in our workshops.
Yes. But firstly, I just want to quickly bring in Amrita. Thank you, Marlene, for giving us the entire background of how the project came about to be and what is the probable, how we are moving ahead with this project, what we've done so far, and where we think we are going with it. I just wanted to quickly bring in Amrita, and then I will speak a bit about the India component, and of course, then bring you and Amrita back in, especially with the wonderful AI work that Amrita did for us for the India workshop. But Amrita, a quick word on how you got on board for this project.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. So basically, I'm just gonna say how we met. So Marjolein was showing a presentation of birth futures in Amsterdam during a speculative design, sort of like maybe a presentation. And I think that's when we started like talking, and we started getting like I started becoming involved in this project because I found this very interesting. As I do agree with her when she says that there aren't any pregnant women being represented well, is probably the reason why I got interested in this project a bit more. And so a bit about my background. I am an animator, and I generally work with clients and companies that require like animation and stuff. And mostly it is like artistic kind of animation where I sort of mix like 2D, 3D, and other elements and stuff like that. Since the past 2 years, I have been interested in AI images, and I've been trying to use AI in my workflow, sort of like mixing traditional animation techniques and then seeing how AI accepts that and what kind of output does that happen. So this was kind of been my interest over the past 2 years. And with birth futures, when we started initially creating like these illustrations and these small little like birth room and stuff like that, we try to make it into VR and AR so that people would be more involved in this kind of future speculation that we try to do, where you would completely, so the idea is to completely dissociate in a way that how can you represent future with all of these elements. And sometimes we use AI as well to sort of like show a very uh, I wouldn't say weird, but an interesting kind of like output, and then how that would look probably, I don't know, 100 years from now. So things like that is where we would start to like use design elements and creative elements into this topic. Yeah, I think that's how basically I got involved in this, and that's kind of it about me. I think Priya, once you start like explaining, then I would come again and probably explain how this happened.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amrita. And yes, so methodologically, I think Amrita's work really was instrumental, because see, what happens is that when we go out for these workshops and we ask someone that, okay, how do you think the future would be, say, 100 years from now? It seems like a slightly weak question, where they're like, okay, but we're just not thinking, we're done, we've had our kids, and we're done with it. So then how to get them to speak about that? That is where I guess Amrita's work was really instrumental. So I just wanted to I just like before getting into what we actually did, I wanted to just give some brief background of where we did it in India. So we thought, say for example, in Peru, like like Marilyn mentioned, we did it with the midwifery college, and with the midwives in the system. Now in India, given midwives are it's a very recent phenomenon in India, where the midwives are being incorporated into the government healthcare system with the recent midwifery and nursing law. So we first thought to reach out to some organizations who have been instrumental in getting that law in place. So we tried getting in touch with the institute who has been training midwives for a bit and have midwives in their hospitals, but then that did not go through at the very last moment. And then I was thinking, okay, what else can we do? And that's when it struck me, because I was home up in the north. I'm from Himachal Pradesh, which is, and which is in the lap of Himalayas. I'm from a small and remote Himalayan village, and I just thought, why don't I speak with women here? And I spoke with the Anganwadi head there, and we went to the Anganwadi, and that's how we started speaking to women from that, so not just from my village, but the neighboring villages who would come to Anganwadi for various things. Now, Anganwadi, for those of you who might not know, are uh, the child care and women care centers, and it is an initiative by the Indian government. So they are involved in multiple things, right from giving out giving out nutrition kits to new mothers, taking care of lactating mothers and pregnant women, and then there are also young children who come there. Uh, it's like a crutch for them. Now given they do a lot of work with mothers, I thought, we thought that was a nice place to begin this discussion with, and then slowly, thankfully, a lot of other women who have had their children many, many years ago also joined us. And like I said, initially it was little difficult to kind of, ask them this question, okay, what do you think how the birth will look like after 100 years? So some of them, like I said, were like, but we're done with we're done with it, and then we have so much to do because it's a rural, remote area, and agriculture is a big thing there. Dairy, is a big thing there. So they're overworked all the time. So they're like, okay, we don't think we have time to think of what will happen after 100 years. And that's when, so we had multiple workshops, and I'm really thankful to Marilyn and Amrita, because unlike Peru's workshop where, where Marilyn could do it in person, we were not able to do that because we didn't have funding that time. And we're hoping to do that in near future where we can do it in person. But I'm very happy that Marilyn and Amrita could join in virtually. We had a lot of translation back and forth, but that really helped in that first session when they were there with us, because that's when we realized, okay, how do we have to tweak our methodology if we ask someone like this that, okay, what do you think? What's wrong with the system and what should be right after 100 years? It might not quickly, lead to an answer. So then we thought that let's give some probes to them, that what if you were like at the helm of deciding how the policy should be around birth? And then Amrita also, and we'll go to that later. Amrita kind of came in with our initial discussions, whatever discussions we had initially. She created certain AI images which were then used in the later workshops. And that's when it really kind of helped the women to open up. So just to lay out where we were doing these workshops. So that place has not had road connectivity for many years. So one has to climb up the hill to reach the national highway. Now, in the past, there was a link road that was made to the village, but due to the faulty development practices, so they were trying to widen the national highway, and a part of that fell onto the link road last monsoon, and that kind of devastating monsoon is also the indication of the kind of climate change the Himalayan region, unlike other regions, is going through. So, because of the twin factor of faulty development practices and the climate change, the village is yet again, it does not have the road connectivity yet again, and that was a big issue. Access to a motorable road was big issue that we began with, because and it was really, I think it was really wonderful to have Madeline there, because a lot of things that Madeline shared with, or like how in her birth in the hospital, public hospital, she had a room to herself with an attached bath. Now India is really huge, right? And we do have people who will have these facilities even in India as well. But the region where we were having these workshops, it was a very novel thing for women there to listen to this thing, and then it kind of got us thinking that the future of which these women are imagining is the present for many people, not just in Netherlands but in India as well. And this disparity which is there, this huge gap which is there, how do we fill that? That was one of the things that we then discussed. So it was the access to the remote region. It was also, and then there were many interesting things that later came up, right? From ectogenesis to, so younger, some of the younger, daughters in of the village were like, what if we couldn't give, what if we don't want to give birth at all? Or what if, what if the technology could do it for us? So there were a lot of such questions, and then I will kind of, let Amrita uh, take over now, but and share how she kind of took this whatever discussion we had in that first workshop, and then created some AI prompts, which helped us to kind of discuss further that how do we want our future birth to be. And the other some issues were like that they were speaking about lack of family members with them while they were birthing, over congested wards where they were birthing, the way they were treated by the medical staff. How the say, for example, a woman shared how her mother-in-law was a dai, but her knowledge and experience was totally sidelined by the doctor when she tried to tell that the baby is about to fall down. And nobody paid heed, but then actually she was the one who, kind of, given she timely said something that it was eventually, they were eventually able to do anything. But the doctor was very clear that if we had to listen to you, you could have had home birth. So the way the, at times women's own experiences of their own bodies, or the experiences of dies, for example, is totally negated in the system. So a lot of this came up. And before I hand it over to Amrita, just one thing: given an unmarried woman who is not a mother, I think these women opened up to me. One, because I am the daughter of the village and they've seen me grow up, so because of love and care. But second thing is because I came equipped with a PhD in something around reproductive, health and studies. That my work was on surrogacy. So I guess these twin factors helped them to open up. But again, we couldn't speak about a lot of, so there was no discussion around sexuality or sexual health or anything like that. So there were some issues which still remained, out of bounds for us. But I would now want to hand over to Amrita.
Thank you, Priya. I think we can go to the AI slide itself directly. Yeah. So in general, I think what we try to explore is the role of AI in future speculation. So a lot of times we see AI images of pretty things and stuff like that. But what we would like to do is to actually help in terms of research and to understand how you can expand ideas, or how can you make perspectives sort of come together. So sort of like a medium between when you conduct your research and how you can probably expand that research even further. So this is where we would see AI to be more helpful in this scenario. Okay, next slide. So it's just a bit about how this thing started. I think when Priya had the first meet, there are and she had inside report that she generated. There was this certain things that probably stood out. For some of them, which I've highlighted here, is basically I think one important thing that happens is in India and lot of South Asian countries that I see is nobody really thinks about the future, right? Because the point is that we generally live in the present. So we sort of have this mentality that we have our babies, and then we don't think about that future, and we often worry about what the kid is doing. So this kind of mentality is what we see in generally. And also one thing that stood out was women should be aware of what will happen during pregnancy and birth. And also women sort of should have the knowledge, right? It shouldn't be completely dependent on, okay, going to the hospital and then what they are saying and stuff like that. So sort of like the idea of knowledge carrier to be within the community itself, which was there before, but not, I don't see that much anymore. And Yeah, I think the participation certificate was provided. I think Maruline will get back to that question. And continuing to this, I think doctors were also not too keen on the idea of a midwife present in general, because doctors generally have the knowledge and they don't like the idea of midwives being present. So, taking this insight, I was thinking maybe what would be a future speculation. So Marilyn had originally done for Peru workshop future speculation, the same AI kind of images. So drawing inspiration from that as well. I was seeing that probably what if there is, and a lot of these things were going around when we three were talking and discussing on the calls. So what if there is no pain in birthing? What if ancestral knowledge, like the midwife knowledge, was like propagated in the future? What if we could create a safe and a comfortable spaces for women to give birth? And also basically the idea of creating future technology that revolves around human birth. So what I mean by this particular sentence is that generally when we talk about future or future whatever images, we generally see like science fiction or space cars or some big towers and stuff like that. So this is what every time whenever somebody talks about future, this is the first thing that generally happens. So what if the future is revolving around the idea of women giving birth itself? So not like something that's fantastical, out of the realm kind of thing, but more practical or more human centric sort of approach. So here, keeping the idea that this is kind of Himachal, the terrain needs to look familiar. In this case, probably mountainous areas and stuff like that. And it can't, like, future doesn't have to be too radical or something, but just like small changes, probably, your houses can look different or something like that. And the idea of how women controlling the narrative of their birth. Next one. So I think some images were shown of water birth, community of women, community pool, things like that, and midwives probably helping women to give birth in like a safe pod or stuff like that. So basically, knowledge being propagated through midwife. I think the water birth scenario definitely sparked a lot of discussion, and I think a lot of people were curious about knowing what was water birth, and some of them knew it, but like sort of like they've heard about it, they read online and stuff like that. So this is how things were being like. I guess what I'm trying to say is here how narratives were like exchanged and sort of like how it was like led to a discussion later on. Then, like Priya said, there was also talks of ectogenesis, so images of ectogenesis was shown, and maybe idea of older women giving birth as well. What if like women who are like really old can give birth, and this whole idea of like the biology itself, because what if we have developed medicines and technology where you can give birth, and it's not such a big problem as of such like right now the way it is today, if it was a more positive approach. And this, of course, sparked a lot of discussion. And then we were ready for like the next round of AI images. And I think the insight when once these images were shown, and these were the insights that came. So some of them, so they liked. So basically, what happened was it was more like I would say a big approach where we would show like okay, there is this ectogenesis, there is water birth and stuff like that. So once they were interested, they became more specific to their region and to their needs. So it went like, I would say, a converging sort of like approach where we would show multiple things, and then it became like, okay, now I would like to talk about my needs and what is the problem right now that happens. So I guess emergency transportation in mountainous regions is a huge problem. Understanding because the terrain itself becomes a point of like I would say discomfort, where you can't access hospitals and stuff like that when it's on really on emergency. Special care units and special basically these things to be already there in locations, maybe attached to houses and stuff like that. So these kind of thing, and basically men should understand what we go through. One of this was an insight as well. uh, the women preferred fast relief, faster birth, less pain. So these kind of things kept coming again and again. Again, saying stuff like there is a lot of rain, there's a lot of flood, the terrain is horrible, so the access is again an issue. So converting that to how to produce AI images, I guess what we went is moving to specific birthing scenarios where emergency care is more important, special units are important, integration of midwives is hospital is more important, and things like that. So then these AI images were shown where what if like vehicles special like I mean this is in the future, right? So what if vehicles such as like can actually access terrains because maybe wheel has been replaced with something else, or something much more fantastical in terms of ambulances can come to your house and help you and things like that, where harsh weather and mountainous terrain is not a problem anymore, and where everybody is sort of the whole community is sort of involved, even the men and things like that. Stationary special units for immediate access. So basically having special units attached to your houses, or so they're small and they're tiny and they can be reached easily, and they can also come to your houses. And if, for example, if there is like an emergency pregnancy to be taken care of in the middle of the night, and that can be possible. And facilities to give birth within the special units itself. So no need to go all the way to the hospital, but also these special units have the capability, the technology where women don't have to go through too much pain, basically faster relief, things like that, and basically equal treatment no matter what caste, religion, or age. So these kind of things was addressed and shown, and this was definitely sparked a lot of curiosity and discussion and stuff like that. Yeah. I think now Marioline will take care of the next.
Yeah, thank you, Amrita. I think what I wanna point out is that both the workshop in Peru, and we have Susanna joining us from Canada, who organized that with me there. It was so important to have people with access and knowledge of the local culture, the local challenges, to sort of adapt the method to that context. Because it was so interesting to see the different approaches towards the future and how you think about the future and the role of images and visuals and stories to get a dialogue about what is a good birth. And without that local knowledge, that inside information, it would fall flat, because you cannot come in somewhere and start talking about hopes and dreams for any kind of thing, and specifically with a subject that can be very sensitive, like birth care. It's a very personal and sensitive topic. And maybe one thing I can share from the Peruvian workshop is where I came to Lima, and we were with, I think, 30 midwives for 2 days in a hotel. And we kicked off the workshop, me, Susana, and Maria Jose, who was an educator from Lima. We started the workshop by sharing our own birth stories, which is it's a personal story, it's a vulnerable story. And we immediately felt like the whole atmosphere in the room shifted. And people, the midwives there, they opened up, one person opened up about their own birth from like decades ago. And it elicited all kinds of emotions. And you cannot have the same thing work in every setting, even, in the same country, and you might have different approaches. So I think this method of using stories and imagination, but also relating it to the actual real life world, I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is very important, because otherwise it's just a sci-fi. It's just a story or a movie you watch or a book you read. We want this to have roots in the realities of people. And yeah, we found out that the realities of people giving birth in the village where you're from, Priya, is, of course, completely different from experiences from women in Lima or in the Netherlands. And I think that's what makes this project so interesting, to have these conversations and cross-pollination with each other.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. I just wanted to put it out there that all the things that Amrita and Madeline shared, so the what if scenarios and what Amrita built, as she already mentioned, was drawn from the narratives of our participants. So whatever they discussed, that, oh, what if we get all in the same place? Because a lot of them shared stories, horrific stories of where they had to climb up the hill, and with multiple stops on the way, where they, at times they were lying down on some thorny bushes and all those things. So they shared a lot of horrific stories, just for how much effort they needed to reach up the highway from where they can take a vehicle to the nearby hospital. So that, all these things. So whatever AI images you saw and different things that Amrit and Marilyn pointed out, they all came from the narratives of women. Whatever they shared with us, and like Marilyn already mentioned, I'm so happy to have with us Susanna as well. So before I open it for Q&A, I quickly would want to give stage to Susanna. She is still there. She is the lead of this project in Peru. So yeah, Susanna, if you quickly would want to share a bit about how it was in Peru. And Susanna is a practicing midwife. She's from Peru, and she is based out of Canada.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for this all of a sudden appearance here. It is very early in the morning here well, not very early. It's 9 a.m. in the morning here in Canada, and I was getting my kids ready for the day. So what I can say about the experiences, I could echo what Marjolein was discussing before, is that in terms of ethics, even the thinking about research and the methodology that we use, we have to make sure that our methodologies, as we researchers know, and some newly researchers, or someone who is just trying to find an answer, is that we have to change the path as we are especially conducting international, global, or without borders research. I remember when we came to Peru the first time, even though that I'm Peruvian, I'm immersed already in this Eurocentric way of doing research. It is just impossible. You just get trapped, or you just grow with it as a professional. And then when I came back to Peru, I realized how different it really is to gather information and to even show respect. And respect in Peru meant, like, do we have food for this workshop? Do we have time to re-energize ourselves? I don't mind if you use this information for your own research, but we want to know how it will serve to us. And it doesn't necessarily need to be material, even if you just give me this space to be myself. And that's something that we found in the second day, I think. That we had to apply dancing and so many breaks in between, right? And it was very, very enlightening to see that. And it's part of ethics. I was at the very beginning, as I said, when Marjorie and Maria Jose the night before, we were like trying to make the workshop as plan as clean as possible. And at the end, I said to Marjorie, okay, we're just gonna go with the flow and then see. And Maria Jose was very good because, first of all, she's an educator, so she's like, we have to sense the vibe first to know what is gonna work and what is not gonna work. And that's part also of I felt afterwards ethics, right? You really have to make sure that you're not forcing people to do what you want them to do. You will get what you can get from the people that are there, and then with their level of comfort. And then we were so pleased to know that the way that we let them be actually gave us more than we were expecting to have. So I think that was one of the biggest I think I don't know, new insights that I got, especially from doing this kind of work and methodology, and understanding also our power. Like Marjorie was coming from Europe, and then I'm Peruvian, but I'm also residing in Western countries. So I really have to make sure that we were trying to level down that kind of power relationship. And it's always very difficult. It's just nature wise, because they knew we were coming, we were talking in English sometime, and it just, even the language just showcased that kind of power and coloniality there. But I feel that we did our best, and we are still in contact with some of the participants. So it shows that they felt very comfortable with us, they felt very well respected, and they are eager to continue to participate in further steps for this project.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susanna, for pointing out that how, we were, of course, looking at the ethics and justice of birth in these different places, but then how the research ethics also, kind of came into play in all of this. And your food bit reminded me of the fact that given I was the youngest, though I'm sure some daughters-in-law were younger to me, but they were elder to me in relationship. So I was considered the youngest in the village. So when I took things for them to eat, they were like, no, they felt so old, but you are younger to us, why are you getting things for us? And they were feeling so bad that I spent money on something and I've gotten something for them to eat. So it kind of reminded me of that. And on this note, we open the floor for discussion. So I think we'll start with Swaleha.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for a wonderful talk. This was great, all four of you actually. And Priya has been talking so much about this particular project quite a lot. So I think this is brilliant, and a lot of insights from India were Sorry, my child is humming in the background, so that's there. But a lot of the insights from India are very similar to what would probably happen in Pakistan as well, especially in the rural areas, especially in the village areas now. So how does this particular project, because so in ethics, one of the bigger and broader concerns is that how does research then translate into policy? Because obviously There's such great work that you've done, and there's a lot of material that has been gained. So how is it going to feed into policy? Because a lot of times as an academic researcher, this is also a question I ask myself. So yeah, thank you.
Should I go first, Priya?
Yes, Marilyn, because you already have done this in the Netherlands. So
Yeah. So, I mean, this is of course, a central question to what we're trying to do. Like, we don't just want to have these social dreams, we want to make change. And I think that one of the first things is to sort of map out what we call, and I call, because of my background, like the local care ecosystems. Like, what is the current system of healthcare and the access to healthcare, for example, in the village that we did a workshop in India, and what does it look like, and what are the needs, and what are the possibilities actually locally for that to happen. So ideally, I think I would want to give a voice to these women who have very real concerns. And I think there are also very real possible solutions, or, starts towards solutions. And from what I've understood, and I mean, this is a broad generalization, but that is how I understood it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is that there used to be DIE in the rural area supporting birth that was sort of banned, or at least phased out, discouraged for a long time. And the idea was that it was safer for women to give birth in hospitals. But the thing I think that was not thought through well is, how do people from these inaccessible areas with no roads and, full on labor actually get to a hospital, which, I mean, would be safer. You cannot get there. So these are things that I'm like, how can this oversight happen? And I think that happens if you don't include the actual voices and ideas of people who deal with this. So this is one thing that I would be eager to explore, is how can you actually connect these groups of people, these voices, these people who are not on the policymaker boards, or maybe not even on influential positions. Knowing position of women, is fragile. How do you either include them in these decision-making and policy-making processes, or how do you get the people who are in those positions to not just take into account, but to take as a starting point these voices? So that's like a big question that goes beyond birth care and birth care systems, I guess. But this is something that we are trying to sort of put some wheels in motion, get people to think about this and realize that they actually have good ideas that are worth sharing and hearing.
And I remember, while we were having these discussions in the Anganwadi, the first thing was they were like, oh, nobody has ever asked us about birth and issues around birth. And the other thing is that recently also when I went home, given I've had this conversation now started there, the Anganwadi worker met me, who also apparently is from the same village. So she is a fictive kin for me. So she then discussed some other issues that they were having around with the government and some things. Because one thing very surprising that I got to know, because the kind of work they put in, she told me that they still do not will get the pension benefits maybe later. So all of these things where the workers themselves who are involved uh, around health care of mothers and with younger children feel at times that they are not valued enough in the system. So we are hopeful that with what we are trying to do slowly, this we will feed this into the policy. And the other thing that Madeline has in mind are these exhibitions, multi-country exhibitions that we will put up once we have the funding. But it's a very good question, Saliha. Something that we're really trying to be mindful of, how it should not be yet another research project which is extractive and remains in journals, but actually has some impact on ground. Susanna has some point, I guess, from Peruvian experience.
I know that someone raised their hands before. I don't know if it was someone else, but I just wanted to mention something. And I thank you for this question, because as a midwife, as a healthcare provider, us who sometimes have had the opportunity to be sitting on the decision-making agendas on the table, this is something that everyone knows. Like the governments from Peru, the governments, I bet, from India, and the governments from Canada even, they know all the barriers that people have to access sexual and reproductive health. It's not only pregnancy and birth. There's so much thing, so many other things. The problem is, and this is just in my humble opinion, that as you have mentioned, these voices stay on a paper, on academic lectures, and they're only places. It just goes to people who can read, who can understand the way of saying things. But this particular project, what I really, really like about it is that we are finding a different way to tell the story. Not only that is coming from people, because there's so many qualitative research that are coming from the ground, that we're actually including people, they're sharing their story, their voices apparently are there. But the way that it is delivered, it's still very complicated. So how many people have maybe been asked about their birth in a way that it could be political? It's not only to trigger their sadness, to trigger their trauma, because birth could be very traumatic. Not necessarily birth, but the whole experience of having a baby from conception to the postpartum, and the postpartum can last years after. So how can we make this more accessible in a way that people from all the grounds can understand? And that's where art, I think, has such potential, because art could be in the form as Amerita is doing amazingly with images. And the other part of the project is also making a museum images, or even pieces of art. And art can be so different in so many countries, and it can mean many different stuff with different material. And I think that's some things that I would really like to see on the project as well. It's not the same idea, because again, these things people know. The people making decisions know that people are dying because they can't access care. They know that the mountains are so high in the Andes in Peru and in India as well, and they're dying not because there's no care, it's because there's no access to that care. But the problem is how people understand that too from their side, and how they know that it's their right to have that access to care. So I feel that amplifying the way of knowing these things in a different way might let the communities know that it's their right to advocate for their desires to have a better future. And we're starting from birth, because as I said, it comes from conception and it goes on and goes on. And then people start thinking, oh yes, I didn't know that it could apply also for my general health, right? And just to finalize, birth, and it's known by research too, the very first time that people seek care is when they're pregnant. Otherwise, they go to a healthcare system when they're sick. But they never go. It's just very, very few people, or maybe those who have the privilege to go to a doctor just for a general checkup. But is pregnancy the time when people go actually to prevent something? Otherwise, just people go because they're sick, right? Yeah, I just wanted to say that, and I know someone had their hands raised.
Is there any more question? Otherwise, I'll just give the floor to Amrita for the last word. Yeah, Amrita, so you can just come on.
Yeah, so I guess yeah, so in a little bit about what I can say is probably a little bit about AI images in general. So whenever you see that a lot of these AI images are also being generated based on the training data that we give, and a lot of these images show pregnant women in a certain light, basically holding their bellies and standing next to their husbands or whatever. So if you ask for something more, it's unable to show that. And most of the time it is like Mariolene and I have to like sit and prompt really hard to get images, which is especially like if you're going more cultural, it's going to be even more difficult. So it is a little, I would say, difficult to get certain images, especially in context, and especially to do research and to show people how they can also. The idea is to like sort of imagine yourself in that scenario. So the idea of showing yourself is going to be difficult if you don't show the context properly. So this is a bit of a challenge, as I would say, when creating certain images and stuff like that. But I think overall, this is like Susanna said, this is where art becomes very important to show what we can do and what we cannot do and things like that. And yeah, so based on this, I guess would be my final note and ending to this presentation. Overall, it is difficult to get these things rolling in general, but yeah, if you kind of like have people who are interested to talk to, or who can, hold a discussion, and a lot of seeds and prompts, I would say, a lot of ideas that are go around, and sort of you have a connection between them, it is kind of easy to facilitate and have a flow with these things. So I guess, yeah, that would be like my final note.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the speakers. I'm so happy Susanna also joined us, because usually when we do these presentations of this project, we do it all together. So Susanna is always a part of our conversation, because we talk about all the countries. But this time, because it was on South Asia, but I kind of realized that I haven't sent her the invite. So I did that just a few hours ago, and I'm so happy, Susanna, that you could join us. And to what Amrita said, I really like what Suleha also put on the group, that in many cultures, it is more to do with kin around pregnant women, and not just your partner. So, and that also kind of was brought up in the narratives that we got from the field, that what if we could have our people, what if whosoever I want to have with me, including a traditional midwife, in a safe setting in a hospital. So all these, there were a lot of these discussions we had. But thank you, Amrita, for pointing out that that is a very important question. And we had this one webinar around AI, generative AI. That what kind of prompts might have fed into it while it was being made, and who was at the helm of making a lot of this, delivering a lot of this, and such that I'm not able to get a lot of, the images that are being thrown up are not representative of different cultures. So I think a lot of work has been, put by you, Amrita, and designers like you, for helping us reimagine a different future. So thank you so much, everyone. You will be able to catch the recording of this video on our YouTube channel. And the next session will happen sometime in the second week of March, which will be a book discussion on a book called The Gravity of Hope by Dr. Sripada Chattopadhyay. It talks about this domestic violence and the survival around that. So we will get back all together in a few weeks' time. But thank you so much, Marilyn, Amrita, Susanna, Suleha, Saida, Syed, Ridhi, and I could see a lot of other names earlier, but all of you who joined today, thank you so much, and have a great night, day, evening. Thank you.